Hello everyone, and welcome to my Shadow Mage build guide. This is a high intelligence build that utilizes Night Sorceries like Unseen Form to move around undetected and eliminate your enemies from far away with powerful sorceries like Night Comet, or deliver devastating backstabs and deal with your enemies in close combat with the Moonveil Katana. It's a powerful mage build that also offers a great deal of freedom and exploration. And the best thing is that you can create this build from the early game, as all the essential weapons and sorceries for this build are accessible right from the very beginning. The most important sorcery in our build is Night Comet. It's a powerful spell that has a great range and can pierce through multiple enemies, and that's something I was constantly taking advantage of in my playthrough. It can also be charged up to deal even more damage. But what really sets this sorcery apart is that bosses like Millennia and the Godskin Apostle that tend to evade and dodge your spells and incantations will not react at all to Night Comet, making this the most effective spell in the entire game when dealing with these types of enemies. The initial cast of Night Comet is a bit long, but you can chain cast it to make every subsequent cast significantly shorter, allowing you to barrage your enemies and take them down much faster. It is relatively expensive to cast, at least in the early game. Because of that, you can use its lesser version, Night Shard, until you build a bigger FP pool. To cast our spells, we will be relying on the Staff of Loss. It provides a 30% increase in damage for Night Comet and Night Shard spells. If you want to further boost its effectiveness, you can use a second staff to stack up an additional 30% increase. But keep in mind that you can only obtain one per playthrough, so if you want a second staff, either have a friend trade you one, or jump into New Game Plus and obtain another one yourself. I tested the Staff of Loss with other Night Sorceries like Ambush Shard and Night Maiden's Mist, but found that the Staff of Loss only boosted Night Shard and Night Comet damage. Keep in mind that the Staff of Loss is most effective when you are at 60 to 80 intelligence. Beyond 80 intelligence, you will experience diminishing returns and won't see much benefit from investing further. I tested out several different staffs, including the Seth's Staff, Canyon Regal Scepter, and even the Princess of Death Staff, all with 99 face and intelligence. However, none of them could match the raw damage output of the Staff of Loss when it comes to Night Sorceries. You can obtain Night Comet and Staff of Loss from Celia, Town of Sorcery. The Staff of Loss is on a corpus hanging on a balcony, while Night Comet is located in a chest locked behind a barrier. To remove the barrier, you only need to light up the torch located at the very south of the town. Not very far away from Celia, you will find Father Gowry in his shack, and you can buy Night Shard from him after completing his initial quest by defeating Commander O'Neill and giving the needle to Millicent. I choose the Moonveil Katana as a melee weapon for this build, a weapon that hardly needs an introduction. It is a very fast and powerful weapon that can be obtained from early game. The Moonveil Katana deals both physical and magic damage and scales primarily with dexterity and intelligence. Increasing dexterity improves physical damage, while intelligence increases the weapon's magic damage. The Moonveil Ash of War Transient Moonlight deals 100% magic damage and scales only with intelligence. There are two ways you can use this Ash of War. Pressing L2 R1 creates a horizontal magic arc that can hit multiple enemies, so this is ideal for AoE. L2 R2 creates a vertical magic arc that deals more damage, which makes it a better option against single enemies. It is worth noting that using the Ash of War in close proximity to your target will not only cause slightly more damage, but will also deal significant poise damage, around 30 points. To put this into perspective, a heavy charged Moonveil R2 deals 33 points of poise damage. This means using Transient Moonlight at close range will help you stagger enemies more efficiently. The weapon also inflicts bleed damage, so with enough swings you will trigger hemorrhage on your target. You can obtain Moonveil after defeating the Magma Worm located in Gale Tunnel in Caleb. Unseen Form is a fantastic spell that you will have a lot of fun using. It doesn't actually make you invisible, but rather reduces the range of which enemies can detect you, allowing you to maneuver around them for backstabs or position yourself to line up Night Comet to take down multiple enemies at the same time. I enjoy exploring the world undetected while under the effect of this sorcery and silently taking enemies out. However, it is worth noting that the effect only lasts for 30 seconds, so you will need to refresh it regularly during your playthrough. An interesting thing about this sorcery is that if you cast it before entering a boss fight, they don't react right away towards you as they normally do. This can be very handy to give you enough time to make your setup, like casting Terra Magica, drinking your flask, and casting Renala's Full Moon. I noticed this when fighting bosses like Godfrey and Morgoth, but some bosses will completely ignore it and behave as they normally do. Unseen Form is located inside a chest on top of Invisible Tower in Altus Plateau. To reveal the tower, you have to interact with 3 blue seals scattered around the area. The first seal is located near the Imp statue, the second is a short distance to the southwest, and the third is under an illusionary rock in the far east. Interact with all 3 seals and climb the tower to obtain Unseen Form. Assassin's Gambit Ash of War provides a similar effect. It makes you partially invisible but also muffles your footsteps for 30 seconds. I was curious if the effects of Unseen Form and Assassin's Gambit would stack, and to my surprise they actually did. To test this, I tried to sneak around the enemies in Helk Tree with each spell on its own, but I couldn't. However, once I used both Unseen Form and Assassin's Gambit Ash of War together, I could easily walk around them very close and completely undetected. This will also allow you to get even closer to certain bosses without alerting them. Additionally, it is worth noting that the effect of Assassin's Gambit Ash of War does not wear off when unequipping the weapon used to activate the buff. Another interesting Night Sorcery is Eternal Darkness. It functions as a black hole that consumes all spells that target your character. However, I didn't like it so much as it creates a black spot on your screen that obscures your field of view. It also doesn't consume all the spells, only those with homing properties like Glintblade Phalanx. However, it can be very handy against certain bosses like Loretta, Knight of the Helk Tree. We are also using Terra Magica. This will create a magic sigil on the ground that lasts for 30 seconds and boosts all your sorceries and Moonveil magic damage by 35%. Once I cast Terra Magica, I typically follow up with Renala's Moon, which reduces the target spell damage negation by 10% for 1 minute. This effect takes place immediately, unlike other effects such as Scald or Bleed, which require you to bypass enemies' resistance. Alternatively, you can use Ranni's Dark Moon, which has the added bonus of potentially inflicting Frostbite, which increases all damage dealt to the target by an additional 20%. Both moons have an impressive range and homing capabilities, which allows them to track even the most evasive enemies. Additionally, they explode on impact, damaging any nearby enemies. The hotfix 1.09.1 fixed Golden Vow, Flame Grant meets Rents, and Howl of Chivalry damage to incantations and sorceries. You can take advantage of this by obtaining the Golden Vow Ash of War from early on and attach it to any weapon like a dagger and use it to buff yourself. It's a lesser version than the Golden Vow incantation that boosts all your damage by 10% and damage negation by 7.5% for 45 seconds. The talismans we are using for this build are Magic Scorpion Charm to increase all the magic damage we deal by 12%. This affects your sorceries as well as Moonveil. Graven Mass Talisman boosts all the damage of your sorceries by 8%. However, you do need to reach Mountaintops of the Giants to obtain this one, but you can use the Graven Skull Talisman until then, which also boosts sorceries damage but for only 4%. The effect from those two talismans stacks, so if you want to focus on Night Comet damage, you can use both of them at the same time. Another mandatory talisman for this build is Godfrey Icon, to boost the damage of charged sorceries by 15%. Ritual Sword Talisman increases all your damage by 10% when your HP is full. Those were the talisman setup I used for most of my endgame content. Another option you want to consider from early game is Radagon's Swordseal Talisman, to meet the requirement for the Moonveil Katana while focusing our points on mind and intelligence. Radagon's icon can be used to decrease Night Comet cast time by approximately 6%. I tested this and discovered that if you reach the maximum casting speed reduction from Dexterity, which is 70, the cast time of Night Comet can be reduced by 10%. It is important to note that while using Radagon's icon, you only need 40 Dexterity to reach the maximum casting speed reduction from Dexterity, since the talisman adds 30 virtual Dexterity exclusively for casting speed. The Green Turtle Talisman boosts your stamina recovery rate. By helping you recover your stamina faster, the talisman can enable you to cast more Night Comets without having to wait as long for your stamina to regenerate. There are so many other talismans you can take advantage of in this build, but these were the ones I was frequently using during my playthrough with this build. For the Flask of Wondrous Physick, use Magic Shrouding Cracked Tear to boost all your magic damage by 20% for 3 minutes. Alongside, use Intelligence Knock Crystal Tear if you have 70 or less intelligence. If you have more, replace it with the Cerulean Hidden Tear to remove all MP consumption from your spells for 15 seconds. This will help you chain cast as many Night Comets without having to worry about your MP. You can also use Dexterity Knock Crystal Tear to further boost Moonveil Katana damage and your Sorcery's casting speed. For the armor, I was using the full black knife set. It looks great and fits the theme of this build. The chest piece comes with the bonus of muffling your footsteps, making it impossible for enemies to hear you coming when sneaking up from behind them. That being said, it's not the strongest armor out there, so if you want more protection and poise, you might want to consider replacing this armor with something else. If you decided to use another armor, you can use Assassin's Gambit Ash of War to muffle your footsteps and improve your invisibility for 30 seconds. For the majority of early game, I was using the Carian Knight set from Royal Lucaria Academy, but you can use any other armor you like. If you decided to play this build from the start of the game, use the Astrologer starter class with the Golden Seed as keepsake. Also, check out my early game guide. You can use it to upgrade the Moonveil Katana to +9 and the Staff of Loss to +19, with plenty of other useful resources we collect along the way. At level 50 you should have 20 Vigor, 23 Mind, 13 Dexterity, and 40 Intelligence. 20 Vigor is quite enough for your early game. I never had trouble surviving with this build when you consider you are running undetected most of the time. 23 Mind might seem a little too much, but Night Comet can be expensive to cast and we want to make sure we have plenty for boss fights. I only invested a single point of Dexterity. Along with Radagon's Sword Seal, you will have enough strength and dexterity to use the Moonveil Katana. 40 intelligence to be able to use Night Comet and other useful sorceries necessary for this build, and this should be your first priority. I was also using Godric's Great Rune most of the time, which adds a temporary +5 to all your stats. At level 80 I boosted my Vigor to 40 and Intelligence to 50. We are not using a heavy armor for this build, so a bigger health pool is very important for our survival. At level 95 I removed Radagon's Sword Seal and boosted Endurance to 15, Strength to 12, and Dexterity to 18. I did this to free up a Talisman slot to start using Graven Mass Talisman instead. At level 125 I boosted my Vigor to 45, Mind to 28, and Intelligence to 70. Along with the Intelligence Not Crystal Tier, we reached the soft cap for the Staff of Loss, which is 80, and we are getting the most damage for our Night Sorceries. Here are our final stats at level 150. I finished the game twice with this build in the past weeks, and this was the progression path that worked best for me. But please feel free to make adjustments to fit things in your own playstyle. If you decide to take this build to New Game Plus, I would focus on improving Faith until 33 to be able to cast Golden Vow and Howl of Shabriri. The damage bonus of those two incantations stack with other buffs in our build. You can also boost Dexterity up to 70 to maximize both the Moonveil Katana physical damage and your spell casting speed. This concludes our Shadow Mage build guide. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it informative and enjoyable. If you did, please don't forget to give it a like and leave a comment down below. Your feedback is incredibly valuable to me and helps me create a better content. Once again, thank you for all your support. It means the world to me and I'm grateful for each and every one of you. Until next time, have a great day.